priests. It detailed the accounts of more than 1,000 children, but said there are likely thousands more victims. And the report says church leaders protected the priests in a cover-up that went all the way to the Vatican. Nikki Battiste is in Harrisburg tonight.
Priests were raping little boys and girls, and the men of God who were responsible for them not only did nothing, they hid it all for decades.
Standing alongside survivors of sexual abuse, Attorney General Josh Shapiro said the grand jury uncovered credible evidence against 301 predator priests who abused more than 1,000 children.
The time of telling these victims to keep their truth to themselves has ended.
Men of God, what God? Send this news report to Count Chocula there in the Vatican, who talks about how we shouldn't have borders and condemns our President Trump. Or big shot fat ass Dolan in New York City, you know, the cardinal, right? Who says Trump's out of line about protecting our borders. We shouldn't have borders. You see, Jesus said, you'll know my true church by thy people's works. And raping children isn't in that purview, right? And if you don't respect the border between where your degenerate fingers go and the back of a kid's posterior anatomy, probably you wouldn't want a border. But to bring in more customers, they'll solicit the devil to bring in third world people. And wherever their church goes, that nation gets impoverished. And they take all the wealth. And a 52-foot wall around the Vatican City, which is really its own nation, right? And the Pope protected by halberd, poleaxe-bearing Swiss guards. Because, you know, that's what Jesus did, right? He went around with a bunch of armed goons in a bomb-proof automobile, see? You think they've gone off the rails? What do you think? So, I've always held my tongue on this. As a Christian, this always made me insane. But Hail Mary, full of grace, keep that altar boy in his place. This is sick stuff, people. And I'm not into bashing someone's church, but this church is despicable. And then they have the nerve to get political and tell my president about where our sovereignty begins and ends and where our borders ought to be protected or not. Here's what you Catholics ought to do in the hierarchy. Just like in the FBI, you notice they're all altar boys, Comey, McCain, you know? How about shut your mouths and do your job?